In this video, I'm going to be comparing two .357 Magnum double-action revolvers. On the left is an older model revolver, which is the Smith & Wesson Model 19-3, and on the right is a more modern revolver design, which is the Chiappa Rhino 40DS. I'm going to weigh both of the guns unloaded, and the Chiappa Rhino comes in at 1.85 pounds, where the Smith & Wesson Model 19 comes in at 2.36 pounds. Now, the general model number of this revolver is a 19, and throughout the years from 1957 all the way to 1998, 1999, they went through a bunch of changes, either adding or taking away from the design. And each time they did that, they changed the dash number. So the first dash was obviously a -1 and went all the way to a -8. This 19-3 model came out in 1967. One of the main reasons why I chose this Model 19-3 to compare to the Chiappa Rhino is that they both have a 4-inch barrel and they both have adjustable rear sights. Now, I'm not just going to pull the trigger and let the hammer fall on nothing, seeing as how I don't have any snap caps, so I'm just going to hold the hammer back with my thumb, but I'll still let it fall, but slowly. One of the ways you can fire a double-action revolver is just by pulling the trigger, but with that, the trigger has a lot more weight to it to pull back, so it's going to be a little bit tougher. The second way is to cock the hammer back. That pulls the trigger back, locks the hammer to the rear, and this makes for a light trigger pull. It gives you a better accuracy because you're not flinching or moving the gun as you're pulling the trigger. Now, in older revolvers, the hammer and firing pin are together, like this one. With more modern revolvers, the hammer and the firing pin are separate, and the hammer has a flat face to it. So as you can see here, you can see the hammer and the firing pin. You can see the cylinder and the frame. When the hammer is cocked back and it's released by the trigger, it allows the hammer to fall completely forward, letting the firing pin protrude through, hitting the primer, as you can see right there. Then after the gun has been fired, when you let go of the trigger, the hammer gets pulled back to a safe position. Now, another similarity between the two revolvers is the cylinder release. The Model 19 cylinder release is on the left-hand side. Using your thumb, you could press the cylinder release forward, and the cylinder will come away from the frame to the left side. Rotate the cylinder back into the frame, and once you hear it click, rotate the cylinder until you hear another click, allowing the cylinder stop to hold the cylinder in place. Now, the Rhino is made by the Italian company Chiappa. Now, some people think the Chiappa Rhino is pretty ugly. I happen to think it looks pretty sweet. And what makes it even better is how it shoots, but we'll get to that later. Now, like I said, the Rhino is made by the Italian company Chiappa, and Emilio Ghisoni helped in the design of the Chiappa Rhino, and that's the reason why it looks like the pistols he's known for, like the Chiappa Unica, which is an auto revolver or a semi-auto revolver. How that gun works is with the recoil, it cocks the hammer with every pull of the trigger. So you can start off with a double action pull, and every shot after that is a single action. Or you can pull the hammer back, and then all 6 shots are going to be a nice, easy single action pull. Seeing as how I don't have the funds to own a Unica yet, you should head over to the YouTube channel Life Size Potato. I think he has all of Emilio Ghisoni's designs. I'm very, very jealous. Now, like the Model 19, the Rhino is a .357 Magnum, has an adjustable rear sight, has a 4-inch barrel, but if you notice, the barrel location and the grip angle is a little different than the Smith & Wesson Model 19. Now, like all of Emilio Ghisoni's guns, they have a very low bore axis, so they get that barrel as close to in line with your forearm as possible, and that's why the Chiappa Rhino has that low barrel, shooting from the 6 o'clock cylinder position instead of the 12 o'clock cylinder position. One thing different about the Chiappa Rhino when it comes to cocking the hammer back is what looks like a hammer really isn't the hammer. The Rhino's hammer is actually inside the frame, so what looks like the hammer is just a cocking lever. Once you pull it down, the cylinder rotates, you cock the hammer back. That cocking lever doesn't stay back like a normal hammer would, it springs back forward. And the reason why the cocking lever springs back forward is because the snub-nose version of the Rhino, that cocking lever actually has a notch machined into it, and that becomes the rear sight for the gun. So because that cocking lever springs forward, you have to have some indication that the hammer is cocked and ready to go off, right? So what they did is they made a little cocking indicator. A little red indicator will pop up in front and to the left of the cocking lever. And once you pull the trigger and fire the gun, whether it be loaded or unloaded, that red indicator will drop back down. Now the cylinder release, like on the Model 19, is on the left hand side, but instead of pushing forward, you just pull down and the cylinder will release to the left side, just like the Model 19. And the same thing when you swing the cylinder back into the frame, make sure you turn the cylinder to index it and lock it. Now here's the biggest difference in the two revolvers, and that would be the barrel position. You got the 12 o'clock barrel position of the Model 19 and the 6 o'clock barrel position of the Rhino. Now I'll show you what it looks like when you actually hold the two. And I'll draw a line through the axis of my arm and the bore axis. And you'll see that the Chiappa Rhino's bore axis is a lot lower than that of the Model 19 and practically every other traditional revolver out there. What that low bore axis does is it changes the recoil impulse, and instead of the nose flipping up, it's almost like someone is just pushing on your arm, pushing it straight back, which allows for faster follow-up shots. Now some people say that, yeah, as soon as you see the insides of a Chiappa Rhino, you'll have to second guess yourself and you'll go back with a traditional revolver because it's not as complicated. Now, old school single action revolvers, they weren't as complicated. But the modern revolvers of today, they got a lot of parts on the inside, just like this Rhino does. The only thing the Rhino has, instead of the hammer being external, they've put it internal. So that's the difference. It kind of looks like there's more parts to a Rhino than to a regular modern revolver, but I don't really think there is. Now, one of the big things between the Model 19 as an older model revolver and more modern revolvers of the same type of design is the hammer and the firing pin. Instead of being an assembly like it is on this Model 19, more modern revolvers have a firing pin just like this Chiappa Rhino, where it's held internally in the frame, and it takes a certain amount of inertia to activate the firing pin to compress the spring inside to hit the primer. And here's a Chiappa Rhino animation I got from gun-disassembly.com. Now, when it comes to shooting the Model 19 and the Chiappa Rhino, there's a world of difference. People that say the Chiappa Rhino is ugly and they've never owned one, they've obviously never shot one. Once you shoot a Rhino, you might think it looks a little bit better because that recoil impulse is straight back. That's it for the comparison of the Chiappa Rhino to a Smith & Wesson Model 19. I have an older video out there of these two guns actually shooting at the range and getting a couple different reactions from them. I plan to do more, so stay tuned. If you like this video, give it a like, share it, or whatever, and don't forget to subscribe.